I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
The more you talk, the harder I want to hit you.
I'm happy because of being here today. Fuck you.
Come on, you want me to drive? No, you're supposed to be suicidal, remember? I'll
Anybody
drive.
a drive?
Get in the car.
Fucking shit. Fuck me in the fucking ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt.
Hey everyone, it's Donji Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new semi-rant. And this semi-rant is going to be for the film that pretty much kickstarted Sony Animation. And apparently, I don't know why, apparently Sony Animation decided to try to kick their debut off with this. Apparently they thought this would be perfect to kickstart their animation careers. But this is going to be for 2006's Open Season. Now, this is a film that has a few minor laughs, but at the same time, it also kind of sucks. And especially, I think one of the top bad qualities is this one infamous fucking character in the film that I'll get to later. But basically the plot is, Martin Lawrence from the Bad Boys films, who I like in the Bad Boys films, well, the first three films, not so much the fourth one, and Blue Streak, voices this domesticated bear that lives with a ranger in a garage, and then at one point his life turns to shit because he ends up coming across one day because of a certain laughingstock hunter that thinks the animals will rebel against humanity. Comes into town with this irritating dipshit asshole one-horned fucking deer voiced by Ashton Kutcher, who I do like in films like Dude, Where's My Car, but this character is fucking annoying as shit in this film. This deer he ends up setting free, and then throughout the rest of the film, this deer goes far as to harass the shit out of this character that honestly, you just want to go in and punch the shit out of. To the point where this bear gets kicked out because of his antics, his own selfish nature, and being too much of a stalker. And during hunting season, so he pretty much has to rely on this asshole deer to get him home. And of course, deal with some other force animals, and then turn tables on the hunters. So that's my reaction. This was the movie that started Sony Animation, and I don't know why the hell they picked this. Apparently they had to pick this fucking movie to start the studio's career into the animation world. A studio that would later go on to make stuff like Surf's Up, or Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, or the Hotel Transylvania films, or the Spider-Verse films, or Mitchell's vs. Machines, or K-pop Demon Hunters, or recently Go. Apparently they started off with this. Apparently this is how they started off. Instead of just letting Surf's Up be the film that starts them off, because honestly, that felt way more like a better introduction to them. Apparently, they picked this. You know what would have been more ironic? It would have been more ironic if apparently DreamWorks decided to kick off their animation careers with Shark Tale B movie and not Prince of Egypt. Imagine how more ironic and more weirder that would have been. This feels more like a film that any animation studio would, I don't know, probably try to make after their first success. It feels like one of those. This does not feel like a film that would kickstart an animation studio. They basically here, with this friendship formula, they basically try to do what they did with Shrek and Donkey instead of Manny, except they clearly do not realize exactly the whole why those worked in the first place. For Shrek was here's the thing. You didn't see Donkey ruining Shrek's life and stalking and harassing him the whole time. You didn't see that happen. And you didn't see Sid stalk and harass the shit out of Manny and wreck his life. The difference was Shrek and Manny were alone and depressed. Pretty much Shrek had to deal with people hating him. Okay? He was alone the whole entire time. Donkey did not go far to... At least Donkey didn't go wrecking the guy's life. The guy's life was already miserable to begin with before he even met Donkey. With Manny's family was dead. And he was already depressed, likely going on a suicide trip. And then he bumped into Sid. Alright? And yeah, Sid did annoy the shit out of him, but Sid didn't go wreck the guy's life when it was already miserable. Here, this bear is already living a pretty decent life. And this deer, and he ends up, once again, he ends up saving this annoying deer that pretty much then will not leave him the fuck alone, gets him in trouble, then wrecks his show, and gets him sent to the forest. And he's pretty much stuck with this idiot. Yeah. And the film tries to paint this deer as a funny character, when I thought the opposite. I thought this deer, this asshole that has shithead on his face, and it's gonna stay blocked off, because his character's a shithead. Fuck this character. No. You should have left this character to be killed by the hunters. How was this film made? So, the idea for this came from Steve Moore, who is known for his comic strip in The Bleachers, and more producer John Carlson started Sony in June 2002, and it went immediately into development. Then in February 2004, Sony Pictures announced the beginning of the production of the film. And it was directed by Roger Allers, who, may rest in peace, had recently passed on. And the location was inspired by the towns of Idaho, like Sun Valley, Sawtooth, or McCall. References to Long Lake, Colorado, the dam flood, like Long Peaks, other interesting area are depicted as well. And for the voice cast, Colton blindly listened to audition tapes and only picked Lawrence and Kutcher for the lead roles. And their ability to improvise significantly contributed to the process and mesh with the characters. But apparently when they were filming up until the premiere, the two actors did not ever meet. None of them ever met. Though, so that seems a little weird on that one. But after the film was officially shot and completed, open season would premiere on September 25th, 2006, and then got released on September 29th, 2006. It got mixed reviews and grossed $201 million against $85 million. And apparently they thought that was so successful, they decided it spawned 3 terrible direct-to-DVD sequels that are actually worse. Alright, so this is still a semi-rant. There are a few minor funny scenes in the film, but this is still a semi-rant, so we're starting with the bad qualities. So here are the bad qualities in the story. So this was out during the year 2006 when there was a number of talking animal animations and countless of punchlines with pop culture and big-name stars attached to the products. And around the time, this genre was starting to need a break by that point. And pretty much this was around the time 2006 was filled with that. And open season was one of the many. This was a year when they had stuff like The Wild, which was a shit ripoff of Madagascar, that also wastes a bunch of talented actors. You have a shitty film called Dougal, which is a US dub of a UK animated film. You also had stuff like, you had some decent stuff like Over the Hedge and Barnyard. which even I will admit, Barnyard is slightly better than this movie. You had Flushed Away, which is actually a decently good film. This, though, other than a few minor funny scenes that got a minor chuckle, this is a film that, well, I did used to like as a kid, but it's just aged poorly as an adult. It's just as a recycled plot about loneliness, two misfits forced to unite with each other, finding themselves in each other, relying on strength from their party to survive new environments. Here you see a grizzly bear get forced back to the wild because of this deer he ends up saving. And so he has to rely on this deer for guidance in the woods. Despite the fact that one of the trailers makes it look like he ends up in the woods because he likely goes on this sugar spree, probably off screen, so he probably ends up in the woods the next morning. And the trailer makes it look like that. But no, apparently that's not the case here. And then of course, while they're in the woods, they encounter some other asshole critters that treat this bear like shit for no reason, other than because he's not from the woods. Yeah. Like, these animals are no better than this deer. Throughout the whole entire film, these animals beat the shit out of this bear for no reason, or humiliate his ass, and some of the humiliation antics are caused by this deer character himself. Right there, either pelted with nuts by squirrels, because apparently all these squirrels own every single tree, and apparently these animals don't like this bear for no reason. It's because he's not from the wild, and has a plush toy. That's apparently their reason. So, how do we start off? So, we start off in this small town where Martin Lawrence's character, who's this grizzly bear literally named Boog, lives with this park ranger that's raised him since he was a cub, and spends his days as a star attraction of the nature show. And then one day, this crazy delusional hunter, voiced by Gary Sinise, who I will admit was actually not a bad character. You know, I did find his motives kind of funny, but the reason apparently he hunts animals and loves killing them is because because clearly he's delusional and clearly insane from living in the forest and away from society. He thinks they'll all rebel and start a revolution and they'll become the next phase of humanity. Is why he thinks he's being a hero to the town. Despite the fact he's pretty much the laughingstock of the town. And clearly, what you can see, even the hunters don't take him seriously. Because even they laugh at his reasons. As you can see on like one bit. So not even the own people from his own favorite hobby even like him either. But he comes in with our annoying deer character, who lost a horn because he ran into him, and apparently when the ranger tries to rat him out, the sheriff interviews this hunter, asking if he ran him over by accident, but from what we've seen a flashback, which was actually kind of a funny bit, where did you run him over? The interstate? And apparently we see a flashback he ran him over on purpose. And he just smells like, sort of. Like there. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then, of course, this bear meets this deer who just wakes up and realizes where he is and realizes he's lost a horn. And then, of course, after reluctantly frees him and then escapes. Then after pretty much that, and this deer then immediately, despite the fact that instead of just go back to the woods, like told to, and just, just stay the hell away from town, he decides to basically think this bear is now suddenly his friend for one little deed that he only reluctantly did because he wouldn't shut up. He pretty much stalks this bear back home, and pretty much breaks into his garage, messes around with all his stuff, and pretty much uses a candy bar to make him follow him out and pretty much go, raid and vandalize a 7-Eleven. Right there, and of course, but when the sheriff arrives, the deer flees, while this bear is too distracted by his sugar frenzy. But the sheriff brings him back home, and he tells her that his wild instincts are kicking in, despite the fact that it was actually the deer's fault this happened. And it's pretty much going to be time to release this bear in the wild. And now, this bit when this ranger sends him back into the garage, he starts acting like a little goofy, either flipping the garage door up and down, or throwing stuff out of the garage, or even going and waving. And when she yells him to go to bed, he then throws up on the garage window, which, okay, that was kind of funny, I will admit that. So, now I'll admit, while I do hate this deer character and it is his fault, a part of me also does think that while, yeah, it's true that he caused all this, though, at some point, even if he never met this deer character, don't you think maybe there would have been some other way his wild instincts would have kicked in at this age? You know, I don't know, maybe either destroy your house or destroy your garage, or either maybe break into your fridge or steal food, or would have probably broken out any other way, and probably would have gone into town and raided that store any other way in the first place. Because here's the thing. As much as this bear seems to like his life at home, bears are not fucking pets. Yeah, you may be I get this lady's a park ranger, and obviously would have experience with wild animals, but they don't belong in your house. So, regardless, he probably would have gotten out some other way. Probably would have gotten off ferocious any other way at some time if there was maybe like a blood smell around, because grizzly bears are actually more dangerous than black bears. You know, they're actually much deadlier. And I don't know, maybe if either they got infected with rabies, they probably could have attacked and killed a person. You know? Don't you think that could have happened? Like, bears live in the wild all the time. Another problem, once they get to the forest, where the hell are all the other bears? Shouldn't there be other bears in the forest? So why is this Boo guy the only one there? It makes literally no sense why there's no other bears. Like, there should be more. I'm pretty sure there'd be more bears in that forest. Because bears live in the forest, for Pete's sakes. I'm pretty sure there's lots of bears in Idaho. Like, they could have made this way better, you know, if they actually developed the characters better, you know, actually gave, you know, maybe a much better reason, try to at least make this deer character actually maybe a little likable. They did not really commit to the storyline at all, and there's no really any sign of real chemistry between either of these two. Like, barely that much. The script lacks in plot, and it plays it too safe to avoid being this saturn at the same time, or lack really anything exciting, and your lead characters are really not that likable to get invested in. Like, the villain honestly seemed much more interesting than much of the lead characters did. Right there, and we don't really try to see more scenes of this bear try to be a bit more dangerous, because grizzly bears can actually be aggressive when they're either harassed or provoked. While this is animation, we have to suspend our beliefs. There's too many cliches, it's just ridiculous. And the relationship between these two, one's a stick in the mud, and the other one is just so hyperactive and annoying. They just don't care about either of these two. So the next morning, our deer character gets pursued by the same hunter from earlier. And we're this bit where he's testing out this decaffeinated cup in the garbage. Yuck. Yuck. It's horrible, but it's horrible, but it's like freedom in a cup. Which also is like one of the only other minor funny bits in the film. And then, though, eventually, when the hunter finds him, it walks like a man, and chases after it. And then this deer ends up basically breaking into backstage at this Boog's nature show. But Boog doesn't want anything to do with him, tries to tell him to get the fuck out, but but this deer character instead runs onto the stage. But of course, though, because we see from behind the curtains when Boog's trying to get him out of there, it makes it look like he's killing him. And this makes the audience all panicked and flee. And they start a fight. And so the ranger, the Boog's owner, knocks them out before this hunter can kill them. And flees to avoid getting arrested. And so she now has to relocate both of them into the forest. But they go to the falls where no one's allowed to hunt. And so next morning, and he gets left behind this plush toy that he loves. And then he wakes up there and he's pissed off at the deer and tries to drop him. Or no, he doesn't try to drop him. Well, it looks like he's about to drop him. And I'm like, yeah, good, kill him, please. Please kill this, let this deer character fall to his death. But instead he doesn't. Instead he just lets him on his hand and just throws him behind him. And gets him stuck in the ground. And he tries to go home, but he lacks survival skills. He runs to our first asshole animals, these squirrels, that hog all the trees, make fun of him for having a plush bear on his back. And they pretty much pelt him with nuts, with acorns. And so he goes back to the deer, and because apparently this deer he's lying, obviously, because he obviously doesn't know where town is, but he lies about knowing where town is. And so this bear has to basically take this deer to be his guide to the woods. And so he could go back home and reunite with his owner. You think this deer character would start to develop better as a character? No. This deer character is still the same annoying asshole that he was in the first half. Where basically, Boog encounters more asshole animals that make fun of him. And literally half of them are caused by the deer. Almost nearly all of these scenarios get caused by a deer. They walk past these beavers, and this deer tells them that he's a good dancer, and they're about to be in a show that gets him made fun of by the beavers that are building this dam. And then, of course, when he ends up starving, he tries to hunt fish, but the fish are also smart. And so he has to eat this berry instead, and when he has to go to the bathroom, the deer has him go to this bush, but apparently the bush is owned by skunks. And the deer tells him to try to start a fight with them, but this makes the skunks mad, and they spray him. And then, of course, the only non-asshole animals he encounters are these two ducks. And really are the only ones that really aren't assholes. I'll admit that. And then, of course, while later, eventually, there's the same deer character encounters this doe he has a crush on. But she comes from this herd that's led by this elk played by Patrick Warburton that apparently banished him from something. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Patrick Warburton's character probably banished him for probably being an annoying shit. Seeing this deer character, I'm not surprised Patrick Warburton's character kicked you out. I'm not surprised. You probably were doing the same annoying stuff. That probably even your herd didn't want your ass. So I'm not surprised you're not welcome there. Although, I'll admit, this character also is kind of funny as well. Especially when he first meets the bear character, when he realizes who he is. Oh, I've heard of you. You're that bear that got his butt dumped by a squirrel. But there were 20 of them, and they had nuts. And when he realizes his name, Boog, what's that short for? Booger. Because the bear's name's Boog. Yeah, so obviously, and Booger starts with Boog, so yeah, that was funny. That's kind of a bit of a funny line. I will admit that. I kind of wish we saw more of this character. It's one of the few funny things about the film. And at this scene where he's beating up Ashton Kutcher's character, and at this scene I was like, please beat the shit out of this character. This character's so fucking annoying. Beat him up. Like I was glad Patrick Warburton's character beats the shit out of him. Especially after seeing how annoying this character's been throughout the whole entire film. And this is where they apparently start to bond, after they realize they're both outcasts. And then Boog considers letting Elliot stay with him when they get back home in the garage. And apparently this plush toy plays a song that the Ranger sings him before bed. And so he pretty much has asked the deer to sing him this, and because he doesn't know the song, he ends up singing this song about this elf that meets this dwarf has to piss. And of course, Boog's just like, but then of course just falls asleep anyway. And obviously because he knows that the deer doesn't know the song at all, obviously, and pretty much just doesn't care at this rate, so he just goes to sleep. At this whole time, this plot is just typical animated film fare of a road movie with two people that don't like either. It can work with stuff like Shrek. It can work with stuff like Ice Age. Well, Ice Age had 3 people, not 2. There are minor funny moments in the film, but it just has the same cliches you're familiar with. And honestly, it's not well written. And the whole lie's gonna get exposed. And there's just gonna be a third act breakup after the scene where they warm up to each other. Right there. And just that. It's just a ripoff from various other films that actually works so well because they couldn't come up with anything original. And then, of course, this is where the whole lie gets exposed. So the next day, the deer lies again that they'll get home at nighttime. But then, of course, it turns out this deer doesn't know where the hell he's going. And they end up in circles. And Boog starts to realize this and confronts him on this while this is happening. But, of course, our evil antagonist pretty much thinks he shoots them. And pretty much then realizes this. Boog tries to flee. On the very dam they come near from earlier. Obviously, Boog thinks it's a bridge. So he walks across it unknowingly. And it destroys the dam. And it causes a massive flood that washes away all the animals. And sends the hunter villain going down a waterfall. And they end up in the hunting grounds. Just in time for open season. And everyone thinks the bear did all this, and they blame him for it, despite the fact that you guys treat him like shit the whole film. So why should anybody feel sorry for you guys? And not to mention, you guys want someone to blame the deer. The deer's the one that pretty much started all this on you guys by harassing this bear, getting him sent there. Oh, and pretty much being the one that, I don't know, is pretty much what lied to him about knowing the way home and sending him in circles. At this point. And even when the deer tries to defend him, though, but this Boog already knew that this deer lied and tells him it's actually his fault. And apparently the deer... Yeah, that's true. The deer only lied. And apparently the only reason the deer lied about knowing the way back is so he could make him be friends. So easily, despite the fact this bear did not like you, at this point, you've already wrecked this bear's life enough. To the point where no way in shit this guy should be friends with you at this rate. And pretty much he storms off and ends his friendship with them. And pretty much decides to go back home himself. And when pretty much the animals try asking him for help, he's like, "You're not my problem." Yeah, they're not your problem. Why should this guy save any of you guys? You guys treat him like shit the whole film. So no, don't save them. Please. Yeah, leave them all to die. They deserve it. Yeah, if a bunch of characters would treat me like shit, I'm not saving any of them. Especially one that ruins my fucking life and keeps harassing the shit out of me. No. I'm sorry, all these characters and this deer are on my shit list. So, meanwhile, though, he ends up at the villain's cabin, where he eats his candy bar in the fridge, uses his bathroom, and then immediately sees where he is when he sees all the animals, his trophies in his house. And then, of course, then he pretty much then realizes that all these animals are going to die the next day. And it almost gets discovered, but he escapes. And he manages to get back to town, but this character becomes an idiot and it becomes such a fucking moron. Decides to go back and save the asshole animals. And go back and save the very deer that put him in this fucking mess to begin with. Just why? No, just go home. These guys did nothing to deserve your help. Just go back home and stay home. Better idea. I would have just went home. I'm not going back for any of these guys. And, but when he does, you really think this deer, maybe would apologize for lying the whole time? Maybe try to see and apologize for constantly stalking and harassing him? No, apparently, this movie tries to treat Boog like he's in the wrong. Despite the fact that this deer character is the real one in the wrong the whole entire time. So no, if anything, this deer character should have been the one apologizing. No. But they don't get that, because the movie doesn't care to develop the characters. Then he rallies the rest of the animals to defend themselves against the hunters, so they rob an RV, and this one dog that's pets with the owners randomly decides to join them. And so, now, some of the stuff I mentioned earlier makes me laugh a little bit. The animation, I guess, is not bad because to be fair, this is a first film they did. So the animation's not bad. The problem is that it just has a shallow, abrupt story. And the movie tries to force certain characters to be lighthearted, good comedic figures, but these so-called comic reliefs just end up being unlikable and annoying. And to the point where you honestly don't care if some of these characters get hunted by the hunters. Especially comic reliefs who fuck up a lead character's life. When instead of just go back to the forest and just stay in the forest, which is all they had to do. And then basically once you've already fucked up this character's life, lie about knowing the way home. And this main character is also a big fucking idiot because he just goes back and easily forgives this deer despite all the shit he caused him. Like, no. Don't save this guy. This guy's done nothing but wreck your life, get you harassed by animals. Because almost get you killed by the hunters. No. This guy did nothing to deserve your friendship. And you know something? Speaking of this deer, yeah, there's a deer right there. Above my Sonic 3 poster. So you know what? Just pretend that's the deer character. After the film, just pretend that's that same deer. Just grew his antler back. And I went in there and hunted him down and mounted him on my wall. There. There you go, people. Well, that's actually a board game deer pond, but it can also be kind of hung like a deer head. Just pretend that happened. That'd be a better ending. So now we get on with the finale. So the animals then revolution and battle the hunters, and they flee. Because after the same squirrels that pelted the bear with nuts, blow up their trucks with a propane tank bomb. But then our antagonist returns, has this fight with Boog. Before he's about to kill Boog, Elliot then pretty much, despite the fact that it's kind of too late for this heroic sacrifice stuff at this point, he throws himself in front of Boog and takes a shot. And Boo confronts the antagonist and somehow is able to tie him up with his own gun for some weird reason, despite the fact that guns are not ropes. And apparently, though, you think that this annoying deer character is finally dead? No, apparently he survived and it only shot off his other antler. That's that. And of course, then the other forest animals beat the fuck out of the antagonist. And he runs off into the woods. And then, of course, Boog's owner shows up to take Boog back home. But you think Boog would just go home? Just go home. No, instead he decides to stay. Yeah, I get this is supposed to show that bears are not pets. I know that, but on all honesty, at the same time though, well, yeah, he belongs in the wild, but at the same time, I'd rather stay with an actually good owner than stay with a bunch of asshole animals that were rude to me the whole entire time for no reason at all. And for reasons that were petty as shit. But so yeah, either stay in the wild of my territory, or go with or stay with an actual person that wasn't a shithead to me or wrecked my life and actually treated me with respect. But he stays in the forest with the rest of the animals. The end. But then apparently our antagonist then emerges from the woods. And because he's still turn-feathered, the people they robbed for their supplies, they think he's a Sasquatch. And they run him over and kidnap him. And I guess you can obviously imply, although apparently he returns in the fourth direct-to-video film. Other than that, up until that point, I guess you could have implied that he probably got killed and stuffed. Very likely, or probably as soon as they probably went back to town, probably got arrested. I guess you can imply that stuff. Either of those. But that's how open season ends. Some minor laughs, but at the same time, not a good film. That just aged badly. Now do I have any good qualities? So, our main hunter villain, voiced by Gary Sinise, is actually one of the redeeming things of the movie, and his motives for hunting animals is actually kind of funny and ridiculous at the same time. Patrick Warburton's character and some of the squirrels, I will admit, do get a bit of a laugh out of me. And some of the scenes with Boog and the rain and his owner are actually nice, and I wish that got more focus instead of his friendship with the deer. But sadly, apparently they think the deer is a better focus. So instead of the bear and the ranger would have been better. So other than those, this film just aged badly like sour milk, and this should have not kicked off Sony Animation. So in the end, I would say, if you want a better way to start off Sony Animation, just go watch Surf's Up or Cloudy with Meatballs, because either of those felt like better starts to this animation studio than this movie does. Anyways, that's it for my semi-rant on open season. If we're going open season, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, I guess if you want to see the start of Sony Animation, well, this is not the case. Just go watch Surf's Up, and just pretend Surf's Up is the real start to Sony Animation. And if we're going to rank open season, I'm going to give open season a 5 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. Officially wraps up my semi-rant for open season. Now I want to know in the comments down below what you guys thought about open season. And until then, that will be it for this semi-rant. Thank you all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, then don't forget to subscribe to Don G. Corleone.